This grammar lesson is all about action verbs, which are words that name things we do. So by the end of this lesson, you will be able to define action verbs, recognize and identify action verbs in sentences, define transitive verb, object of the verb, and intransitive verbs, and tell the difference between transitive and intransitive verbs. So your cue words are action verb, transitive verb, object of the verb, and intransitive verb. And you might notice here that these words are all color-coded, so you should look through those colors throughout the rest of the video. Action verbs are quite simply words that name an action or something that can be done. So identifying those is as easy as looking for words that we can do, like smile and hope. Keep in mind that sometimes these actions aren't so easily identified because hope we can't really see someone doing, but it's still something we do with our mind. So if you can think it or feel it or physically do it, it's an action verb. And to look for action verbs, you're just going to look for what's being done in the sentence. For example, Tara carries all her science books. What is she doing? She's carrying the books. The old truck trugged into the garage. What did it do? It chugged. So carries and chugged are action verbs. There are actually two special types of action verbs. They're still action verbs, but they have different natures, and these are your transitive and intransitive verbs. Transitive verbs are action verbs that have objects, which just means that they have a noun that receives the action of the verb. So somebody or something the verb is done to. To identify a transitive verb, you're going to find the action verb in the sentence, then ask the question who or what after the verb. If you can answer that question with a noun, the action verb is transitive. So let's take a look at a few examples. Tara carries all her science books. We already said that carries is an action verb, so she carries what? Books. Books are a noun, therefore carries is transitive. Bonnie opened the drawer with difficulty. Bonnie opened what? The drawer. Therefore, drawer is a noun and it is transitive. Colleen hugged Carolyn. Colleen hugged who? Carolyn. Yep, hugged is transitive. The bicyclist suddenly hit a pothole and Carolyn pet the cat. We've got verbs identified here, but I want you to try these two examples in your notes on your own and tell me whether or not they're transitive. Also make sure you write down what their object is so that you can tell me what noun is acting as that object and what makes that verb transitive or not. And that brings us to intransitive verbs. These are action verbs that do not have an object. To tell whether or not a verb's intransitive, you're going to do the same thing you did before where you find the action verb and then ask who or what. If you cannot answer that question with a noun, the action verb is intransitive. To remember the difference between intransitive and transitive, you might remember that the prefix in means not. Therefore, intransitive verbs do not have an object. Let's try and tell the difference between some transitive and intransitive verbs. Chuck painted the garage door. And the student painted in art class. Both verbs are action verbs. Painted, something that you can do, but only one of them is transitive. The first sentence, Chuck painted what? The door. Therefore, door is a noun. Painted is transitive. The student painted in art class. Painted what? We don't have a noun to answer that. This verb is intransitive. Let's try it again. Jody sang a funny song. The chorus sang on stage. Jody sang what? A song. The chorus sang what? We don't have a who or what answer. Therefore, sang a funny song, sang is transitive, Saying on stage is intransitive. Try and tell me which of these two sentences has a transitive verb and what its object is, and which sentence has an intransitive verb. And remember that action verbs tell what is being done in a sentence. They have two types of action verbs, transitive and intransitive. Transitive verbs have an object, which is a noun that receives the action of a verb, whereas intransitive verbs do not. And if you want more information or a few more examples, you can look in your Writing Coach textbook on pages 314 and 315